The thing I'd like to say about the Huey is it was a very fine helicopter, perfect for operations in Vietnam. We're mostly in the Delta. We were fighting against small units of Viet Cong. We were supporting the province advisors of province chiefs and the divisions in the provinces, covering the Cambodian border with against the supplies and ammunition coming from Russia and China that would come up the Mekong River, past the border of Vietnam into Cambodia, and then they would load it in sampans and bring it across the border. We tried to stop as much of that as we could. So we were doing everything. There were Hueys in Vietnam when we got there, but most of those were just the Utility Tactical Transport, UTT, and they were flying medevac and VIPs. They didn't have any other support that I know of. We had the first Huey lift company to go into Vietnam in March 1963. And when we went in, we had our own gunships, we had our own troop carriers, and we did our own scouting. I was only a section leader at the time, a captain, but we were going out almost every day on operations at night, and we were on call. I made a lot of night evacs of wounded soldiers, American and Vietnamese. What I can say about the Huey is it was one hell of a fine aircraft. Never really had any serious problems unless the crews, with their lack of experience, had over-torqued it or something. I mean, I'd see the helicopter flying along beside me lose his rotor blade. But he was going too fast, he was too heavily loaded, and he was pulling too much pitch. Generally speaking, for both of my tours, I was very, very happy with the Hueys, and I have no complaints. It's a good ship. Thousands of hours and missions. The number I never did try to figure out, but it was hundreds. See, we flew 7 days a week, and nights too, if necessary. And the only break we had was when we went on R&R, rest and recuperation, for a week. That's when I got a new helicopter, a new H model, my second tour as a commander of the squadron. And when I returned for my week of R&R, I said, what the heck happened to my chopper? It's covered with patches. The Viet Cong had shot it through with 15 bullet holes that had to be patched up after they inspected it. And I think they were trying to tell the commander, don't do us any favors. And I was riding as co-pilot, and I was letting one of my lieutenants fly as pilot in command. And he had a load of troops as we were going into an LZ, and we got hit in the tail. We were the last ship in a formation coming into the rice paddies. What rice paddies did we use? Well, the Viet Cong had a habit of putting long bamboo poles in the rice paddies that they wanted us to stay away from. So you could only go into ones that didn't have all these long poles. And as we were going in, they hit us in the tail. We lost the tail rotor, and the helicopter spun around and turned over in the rice paddy. I was on the downside, so I was underwater. I got out of there, tried to help save the life of 2 Vietnamese who were pinned under, but I couldn't move that helicopter. But I grabbed one of the weapons and headed for a dike for protection, and Peter Calliser of CBS News had a photographer coming by on a gunship. He got a picture of that. So it's in that film on Vietnam. We resupplied an outpost in 1963, August. And that night, the Viet Cong overran that little outpost of Captain Versailles and his 7 or 8 team members. They killed all but one man that I recall, Lieutenant Nick Rowe. And we never saw him. We searched for 2 weeks trying to find where they might be around the Human Forest, but nothing. 5 years later, I'm running a dry season offensive campaign out of nearby Kamau. And as the B-52s dropped the bombs and went on, we sent teams in to make a damage assessment, and they saw this bearded man frantically running around. Somehow he was loose. That B-52 strike had really upset him. So when the scouts went in to pick him up and bring him back to Cabal, we found that was Nick Rowe. 5 years later, he had survived as a prisoner of the Viet Cong. So eventually he made colonel rapidly, and he wrote a book, and he went around giving speeches. And I believe he took a separation from the service finally, but then he volunteered to come back and try to give us some help fighting the rebels in the Philippines. And while he was there driving to work one day, he was assassinated by the rebels. But I feel that pulling him out of the Yunnan forest and away from the Viet Cong was the best thing that happened there.